On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome our participants to this panel. Our discussion today is on street and pedestrian safety. Let's start by, I would like each of you to introduce yourselves and then state how you're associated with our topic today.
I'll start. My name is Amanda Grebner. I'm on the Safe Routes to School Committee. I'm also on the Safety Commission for the City of New Ulm, and I'm a new school board member, so I'm a liaison with the schools.
I'm Cindy Winters, and I'm the Heart in New Ulm project manager, and I help facilitate the CASHES group, which is the Coalition for Active, Safe, and Healthy Streets that's been around since January of 2014. I also help facilitate the Safe Routes to School action team and the bike group in town.
Hello, I'm Greg Oss. I'm the district engineer for MNDOT here, and I am stationed out of Mankato. And we have jurisdictional oversight of Highway 15 and Highway 14 here in town.
Joseph Stadheim, I'm the assistant city engineer for the city of New Ulm. As part of my duties with that, I'm also on the safety commission as an advisory member and serve with Cindy on the CASHES committee as well.
I'm Dave Borkert. I'm a police chief for the city of New Ulm. I've been active with some of the groups like CASHES.
Thank you. The reason that we're meeting today is because in New Ulm, we had a series of pedestrian accidents that occurred within a 45-day period. This was in November and then also in September of 2018. And the accidents were described in the Mankato Free Press as being more than a fluke. And Dave, that might have been actually a quote from you. I'm not sure about that, but it was in the Mankato Free Press. And New Ulm as a community is an active community, and we ensure the safety of all our citizens, those that walk and those that drive and those that bike in New Ulm. This group is a very important group. They're the people that keep the data. They're the people that know about the accidents, and then they are the people that can help us solve the problems. So I thank you for what you do for our community, and I also am very grateful that you're here today. I think we should start by just explaining the accidents. Dave, if you could talk about those, explain the accidents, and just tell us what happened.
Sure. Some of the collisions are still under investigation, and they're still very much active, at least potentially in the court system. So I have to be somewhat careful with what I'm saying, sure. Just to be respectful. We had 3 crashes that happened within 3 months of each other, and they were very serious. And you know, whenever you have something like that, it grabs people's attention. I know when you had mentioned about the Free Press talking to us, and I was speaking with that reporter, you know, it was more than a fluke when they had said, you know, there's trying to kind of identify some reasons behind it. Is it just a fluke, or is there some reasons where these collisions are occurring? And the bottom line is there are reasons these collisions are occurring. I think it needs to be a collaborative effort between a lot of individuals, basically between the community, to try to make this better. At the same time, as far as the timing, I think that was a fluke. I don't think there was anything specific regarding, you know, why it happened within 3 months of each other. However, like I said, I believe we do have some work to do, and I'll say that to anyone. And you know, I certainly want to work with that collaborative effort. And I've been involved with CASHES, and I had mentioned that actually earlier with the Free Press and with the Journal and other media, that we've been talking about this issue with CASHES for at least 5 years. And you know, we've been talking with the Safety Commission, and everybody's been doing in due diligence, have been doing their job. It's just a matter of, you know, how do we solve this issue? So again, it's certainly more than a fluke. The 3 collisions that happened that we're referring to, all of them were pedestrian, and they basically 2 of them were fatalities, and then 1 was a serious injury. I think all of them could have been prevented. And again, I'm going to be careful exactly, you know, getting into specific details. But we certainly don't want to have these things reoccurring. And I think they could happen literally any day. So 2 of them happened on Broadway, 1 happened on Center Street. And you know, maybe at some point one thing to discuss is, I think we're going to be talking about traffic calming. Both of them are 4-lane streets.
Right.
I think that's at least a factor. I think there's other factors involved with this, but that's at least a factor that I'd like to have a discussion about. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for your information. We have Greg here from MNDOT. And Greg, I'm wondering if you could talk to us about the crashes that have occurred in New Ulm, the pedestrian crashes from 2006 through 2018. And I think collecting data is extremely important for the citizens of New Ulm. So if you could share some of that with us.
I would like to do that. And again, I want to thank you for inviting us here today. This is a topic that has been a lot of discussion in the most recent years. Again, looking at this year, the first 8 fatalities that happened on the state system, 4 of them were pedestrian fatalities since January 1 of this year. So if we were able to bring up the PowerPoint that we have, the statewide non-motorist fatalities, what we're seeing here is in the throughout the state on the system as a whole from 2012 to 2018 is just a quick look back. You know, we average we have as low as 18 in 2014 pedestrian crashes and as high as 62 pedestrian crashes when you look across the system as a whole. So you can see that there's a lot of variability and randomness in the overall statewide data. And what we tried to do is kind of compare that against our fatalities. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that that blue line on the top there, we started tracking in 2003 in the Towards Zero Deaths efforts. We had 650 fatalities statewide in 2003, and we were able to bring that down, all of us working collectively. We're able to bring that down in 2017 to about 328. However, in the last year or so, we've been going up. In 2018, we were at 380. This data needs to be updated. But if you go to the next part of that, so overall our fatalities are trending down, but that red line in there still indicates where we're at for pedestrians. We're really not seeing any real improvement through the years. So when you look at that overall trend line,
Again,
so
this is state.
this is
statewide.
again statewide.
Yeah.
So the next slide in there, if you'll look at, we just tried to give you a quick reference as to where we're at in terms of the state, and now here's where we're at in terms of the city of New Ulm. In our area that we have here, these crashes that are represented on this chart here represent 60 crashes in this time period from 2006 to 2018. If you go to the next slide there,
Can I
you'll
just take a
oh,
minute
sure.
and look at this slide, because it looks like the majority of the crashes are occurring on Broadway Street and then Center. And then I'm not sure what this one is.
That'd be Fifth North.
That would be
Fifth North.
And Fifth North.
Yep.
Just, I think that's interesting to note that.
Yep. And so, I mean, but you can also see that yes, there are crashes that are happening along Broadway, but yet there still are a number of crashes that are happening on the local system. And it's more from the perspective is we are having these crashes throughout New Ulm, and that's something I think is valuable to know too. Not taking away from the crashes that are happening on Broadway, but it is crashes that are happening throughout New Ulm, where we actually identify where the fatal crashes are. There are 3 of the fatal crashes are on Broadway, and that's very important to know. However, there are 2 serious injury crashes that happen, or one on Center Street, and then I'm not sure what the next road over is. First Street, First North. So again, excuse me, there's 3 on Broadway. So again, we just taking a quick look at the numbers. If you go to the next slide, if you take a quick look at the numbers, 33% of the fatalities are happening on the state system, and 60% or 67% were on the county and the local system. So just kind of trying to give an understanding of where the crashes are happening throughout the system. So it's just kind of a little bit of background there, just kind of help you to better understand. We have a few more. Maybe we'll see as the conversation proceeds. If there's more data that is needed, we can maybe supplement some more data in terms of the time of day and the distribution of those crashes amongst ages and things like that. We have that other data.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. We know that New Ulm has wide roads. We are a city of wide roads, and we also have limited crosswalks in New Ulm. So when we look at the problem, this is what the problem is. What can we do about it? And I guess that's what I'm asking this group. Okay, we've defined the problem. We know it's a problem. We want all of New Ulm to be safe as far as pedestrian traffic goes. And I'm wondering if we could just look a little bit at just some questions that I have. Does this panel feel like we know what the problem is?
I think we have a basic understanding of the data, but I also believe that the data changes, and as traffic patterns change, so does the data and so does the need. So with the Safe Routes to School program, we do have parent survey data that says that the reason that parents don't allow their children to walk or bike to school is the speed of traffic, the amount of traffic, and the uncontrolled intersections. And when you say we don't have crosswalks, we don't have a lot of marked crosswalks in town, but every time you are at an intersection, and that is considered, if you have a place to cross and go to on the other side, that is considered a crosswalk, whether it's marked or unmarked. Okay. And so the state law does say that if the car has the amount of space to stop, if a pedestrian is showing intent, then the car or the driver is supposed to stop for the pedestrian. Mm-hmm. We're not really very good about doing that in a lot of cases. We have worked, the Safe Routes to School program has worked to get enhanced crosswalks painted at around all the schools, because the enhanced crosswalks have been shown to improve yielding behavior for drivers. Mm-hmm. We could probably use more of those.
Is that like zebra striping?
Yes.
Where they do the diagonal? Okay.
Yeah, because you can see those farther away,
yes.
And so the driver can prepare to stop farther away as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that same misconception, Cindy, that every crosswalk, regardless if it's painted or not, is a crosswalk of when you read state statute. So that's one aspect of it, I think, is education. Is be pretty important with that, is just to make everyone aware that even though it's not painted, it is a crosswalk, and by state law, you are required to yield to a pedestrian.
Right. I just wanted to, Dave, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, and just a little bit maybe to reinforce even comments and statements that have been made. When I live right on Broadway Street. So if I walk to work in the morning, and I live on the east side, so if I'm going to cross the street, cross Broadway to go to work, I don't have a scientific pole out there. However, if I go to work in my civilian clothes, and sometimes I'll be wearing civilian clothes when I go to work, I have a very difficult time crossing the street, crossing Broadway at that time, at 4 South and Broadway. But I think, we could be doing that on any of the intersections realistically. But we don't have a stoplight or anything like that there. But I have a very difficult time crossing, and there'll be kids going to school about that same time, and they have a very difficult time. When my son was going to school, when he was younger, he's in college now, but I had a lot of concern with him crossing the streets, just because, again, the courtesy to pedestrians, it's notable. If I go in civilian clothes, I have a hard time crossing. Now, I think they see me, because if I go to work like this, it's like they're stopping and saluting me when I'm going across the street. Mm-hmm. So, it's a very different, as far as what I observe, it's very different. Now, again, that's not a scientific poll or anything like that, But you could realistically do it any morning, and I'm confident you would get something like that, because I've been doing that for, last 20 years. So again, it's nothing that's just emerged. I think unfortunately we've had these serious fatalities and these serious injuries happen recently, but I think this pattern has been going on for a very long time.
Right. I agree with you, and I think it's worth mentioning to our audience and to those that are driving that the speed limit in the city of New Ulm is 30 miles per hour. And I am one of those persons that's very interested in data. And what the data states is that if a person is driving within the city speed limit, going 30 miles per hour, and if you were to hit someone, especially a child, 50% of the time, that person is going to die. And if you go 40 miles per hour in our city streets, 1 out of 10, now I have goosebumps, children, people will survive. 1 out of 10 will survive. So 9 out of 10 will die if you go 40 miles per hour and you hit someone. And I think part of the importance of this panel is if you go 20 miles per hour, you're a child, a person, and you hit a person, they're very likely to survive, but it feels very slow when you are a driver driving around the city of New Ulm going 20 miles per hour. It feels very slow, but I think it's worth educating the public in the fact that maybe that's what we need to think about is slowing down and paying attention. And I also wanted to just mention, as far as pedestrians go, I too live on Center Street and Broadway, and when I want to go downtown, I cross Broadway, and there's a safe way to cross a street. And I know that this is kind of an elementary thing, but I think it's worth noting, and I can talk about it if someone else on the panel would like to talk about the importance of crossing a street safely, but you don't necessarily, when you're that person on the corner and you've pushed that button and you get that green person that says you can go, well, no, you don't go, because you have to stop and turn and look and make sure in New Ulm the person that's going to take a right-hand turn into you also has the green light. So pedestrians too need to be vitally aware of where they're crossing and give drivers that eye contact. Don't think that you're going to make it if it's risky, because probably you won't. That eye contact is so important. So you turn and you give that person a smile or eye contact and you realize, okay, they're going to stop, I can go. And sometimes when I do that, especially now when the cars are coming down Center Street, it's a little bit icy. So I am waiting till they see me, because I know I have driven right through stoplights myself. It's slippery and away you go, and I didn't mean to, but there I did. So I think it's also really important for pedestrians to just pay attention and to be extra cautious and understand that, yes, you have the green person, you can go, but look, give people eye contact and make sure that you are safe, and be extra cautious because the roads are icy. I'd like to talk about the engineering part of what's going on, the physical improvements that we can make. I'm very interested in the engineering aspect. What are we proposing as far as street safety?
Sure.
And what's in the future? What would we like to see happen now? And what would we like to see happen in the future? And I'm also interested in where the money is going to come from. Who funds what?
Well, that's a very good question, the latter part of that. I guess I'll just kind of go through our general design process and how we take things to Safety Commission and City Council. I'll kind of use last year's German Street project by Johnson & Johnson Field as an example. In areas where we have high concentrations of pedestrians and walkers and things of that nature, we kind of used German Street as kind of a pilot to see. We put in a number of bump outs, pedestrian bump outs on that segment to kind of alleviate the pressure on the roadway for when sporting events get over. And that's been, so far, been pretty well received. Again, those improvements are appropriate where we have that high concentration of pedestrians at a given time. Granted, it's not every day, it's not every hour of every day, but during those sporting events, those crossings have proven beneficial. But on
Excuse me, are those temporary? Are they?
nope,
permanent?
they're permanent.
Permanent,
Yep,
okay.
yep. It creates kind of a, for a lack of a better term, a plaza area for the baseball and football field there to allow the congregation of multiple people. But so that we use that as that pilot project just to kind of see how it works, well received. But on a typical residential street, you know, generally those type of improvements aren't really warranted for the number of one, the number of vehicles per day, and two would be the number of pedestrian crossings per day. A lot of the enhanced improvements are recommended for anything over 1,000 vehicles per day, which our local streets, with the exception of some of our state aid streets, we don't reach that vehicle threshold. And then the kind of magic number for pedestrians is around that 20 per average per hour,
Okay.
which again, you know, around the schools we get that number, but those are generally on the state aid systems as well for streets. So we kind of have to balance our multiple users of the roadway, and that's where we adopted complete streets policy to kind of, when we design something, to give us that reminder that we're not only designing this roadway for cars, we're designing it for bicyclists, pedestrians, delivery vehicles, garbage trucks, anybody who uses that roadway. We try to keep that in our mind when we're designing improvements, because you know, we have to, you know, just keep the roadway safe for everybody that may be using it. So that's, you know, a brief snapshot of what we do during the design process of a project. But it really allows us to really look at that process and to propose improvements. And then once we get a preliminary design done, if there are proposed changes like we did on German Street, then we bring that to the Safety Commission, let them review that and make their recommendation. And then in turn, we take that to the City Council for final approval. But that's kind of a brief snapshot of our design process, I guess, is from an engineering standpoint.
Do you have plans for improvement on Broadway Street or Center Street, or was it 4th? Help me, what was the?
Fifth.
4th South and Broadway, is there anything?
Any improvements to Broadway would be under the jurisdiction of MNDOT. Center
Okay.
Street is a county highway. It's County 13, CSA 13. So those are, it's kind of a shared, Center Street's kind of shared between the county and the city. 5th North is local street by the clinic there. We are actually reconstructing 5th North this summer. It's a proposed improvement that'll be going to the City Council for a public hearing soon. And 5th is a busy corridor. We are doing some enhanced pedestrian crosswalks on 5th, crossing from north and south on that improvement. But there, we had to balance the numerous vehicles per day. I'd have to look up the ADT on that, but it's a busy roadway. It's a main arterial into the city, so we had to balance. So we are adding sidewalk to both sides, because currently 5th, there's only a narrow sidewalk on the south side, so we will have wider sidewalks on both the north and south side. So hopefully that will help the pedestrian movements in that corridor. And then with the enhanced zebra stripe crosswalks, hopefully that brings extra attention to the workers that may park on the side streets and walk across 5th to the clinic or hospital, and then, you know, patients as well.
Great.
So
Could I just ask, let's say that we decide that we would like to see improvements made on Broadway or improvements made on Center Street. What do we need to do? Can we just tell you about it and you're going to fix it for us, or how do we fix it? How do we improve it? What does the data say that we need to do, and how do we do it?
So what we try to look for, so we've done a lot of improvements on Broadway in the last few years, and we've taken a look at, you know, what is out there, what exists as it, you know, right now in this condition. We are, as a part of our overall design effort, just like Joe here with the city, we too look at when we come into a community, and we typically, where we would come in and just fix the ramps, so that we provide for ADA movements for those, for all pedestrians. That's the kind of fixes that we are typically doing in most of the communities. So what we would kind of take a look back and start to see, are there things within the community where improvements might be warranted, like street lighting? Can people see, or at the intersections? And just taking a look at where the crashes have taken place, and a quick drive through the city, even on our way over here today, lighting looks like it's adequate. I didn't see it at night, but just the sheer number of lights that we have out there, that's one of the things that we can do. With the geometry of the Broadway as it exists today, there's that vertical difference between the two sets of lanes that at different locations, what makes it a little bit challenging. And, just the feel of the road, like was done with the bump outs, it creates just a little bit of friction. If people feel just a little bit of friction, they're more likely to slow down. And here on Broadway, when it was originally designed, it was more for moving vehicles through the community. And so, taking those things into account. Now, if there's something that, that would be a definite, situation where there was a lot of crashes at a particular intersection, that's where we would go in and take a look at it. Is there something we do? We would be talking with the city, we'd be talking with the community on a particular intersection if we saw a lot of crashes. Sometimes it's just little things like cleaning out some brush or cleaning out trees, creating a better sight distance for people that are coming off a side street. So there's the little things that you can do, but as we drive down Broadway, at least it's not a thorough review, but I just didn't see those things, those little things that we could do to create a better sight distance for the driver and for the pedestrian. Now, if there was something that the community wanted to advocate for, a crossing, if there was a high concentration of pedestrians that we're not aware of, and a crossing, we would, there's new technology, there's new features that we can put into roads that would assist with pedestrians crossing. However, you need to be limited in how you do that. Otherwise, it's like anything else. If you have an improvement at every intersection, people will, again, they'll get used to that and they won't see that. And it's kind of that familiarity. It kind of takes away from what you're trying to bring to their attention. So it's a good, we need to talk about it, we need to look at it, we need to think about it. And that's what I've really liked about Safe Routes to School. Really, the community has gotten together, looked at their route that goes to school, look at what safety improvements can be made, and been able to go after that funding that's available for Safe Routes to School to make a difference. And we are highly in support of that.
We recently, back in January, the city submitted a Safe Routes to School grant for a RRFB system on Broadway at 4 South Street. So we haven't received any update on that, but we are actively looking for funds to try to help improve that crossing, to provide one more spot that's a safe place to cross Broadway in between Center and 10 South, because that's a 10-block stretch where we don't have anything marked. If that funding were to become available, that's a system that we would hope to implement.
Is that a flashing beacon?
Yeah, so my apologies. An RFB is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So it's one of those systems that's a push button activated by a pedestrian wanting to cross Broadway. And then there would be sets of signs that would flash to alert motorists that there is a pedestrian here that wants to cross. And once the motorist stops, then the pedestrian is free to kind of cross the roadway. But it's not a stoplight, so the pedestrian still has to be active and when they watch the traffic and whatnot. So it's a system that's really a helpful tool for a pedestrian to cross. Granted that they still need to pay attention, same as the motorists and everything like that. But so that's something we are actively hoping we get our funding for, but we'll see where that project falls in the review process.
Amanda, could you talk to us about Safe Routes to School?
Yeah, so Safe Routes to School it's a national program, I believe, to provide students with a easy way to bike or walk, safe way to get to school. Walking and biking, it has all kinds of health benefits, mental benefits. The exercise in the morning before school helps improve behavior. There's lots of important things. So we want to be able to provide our students with a way to walk and bike to school safely. So the Safe Routes to School in New Ulm is a coalition between city engineers and officials, and plus all of the school districts. We have 3 different schools in our, not districts, but schools in our area. So we work with the public and the private schools, and we have come up with a route that is safe and the preferred route for the students to take when they walk to whichever school that they walk to. Then what we would like to do is enhance all of the crosswalks, so that that provides it for those drivers, that they know when they see the enhanced crosswalk that a student will most likely be crossing there, that sort of thing. Do you want to add some more?
Yeah, so part of, one of the projects that we're working on is just outside, is the intersection of North Washington and North 5th Street is a busy intersection. North 5th Street it's a collector street, is that correct? And it does get a lot of traffic, and NUAX is trying to get their kids to walk to school, so we've done a demonstration project at that particular intersection. We did that in September of 2017, so we did some temporary curb extensions at that location to see if it helped slow traffic. There's also a stop for the pedestrian and the crosswalk sign, and they also have student crossing guards at that intersection. But in observing the student crossing guards, is they kind of just wait for all the traffic to be gone before they let the people cross. So we're just trying to figure out ways to make it safer for kids to cross. We've worked with the police department. They have a new speed device where they can monitor speed, but that speed device also collects the amount of traffic, the speed of traffic, and it collects the data, and then they share it back with us, and we bring it back to the Caches Coalition and the Safe Routes to School Coalition. And for the most part, the majority of drivers in UM are following the speed limit. But like you said, 30 miles an hour, if a child gets hit at 30 miles an hour, they have a 50% chance of survival. So how do we slow them in that particular area so it's safer for them to cross? And curb extension we talked about a variety of different things at that location. And that's part of to answer your question about what is it that citizens of New Ulm can do, is bring those concerns to the Caches group or the Safe Routes to School group, because we talk about them and we really try and dive into, what is going to work at that location, because the city engineers are at the table, the police department's at the table, all the schools are at the table, and we look at the data and it's what's going to work for this particular location, and really try and come up with the best solution for the least amount of cost. We're not trying to frivolously spend money. We're just really trying to be very cautious about how we help to slow traffic.
Can you tell us what Caches is?
So the Caches Coalition is the Coalition for Active, Safe, and Healthy Streets. And it came about as a result of, in October of 2013, we brought in a national transportation expert to really look at what the transportation options were in UM, where we could make improvements. And we're really fortunate in UM that we have sidewalks throughout the majority of the community, but we have ways, there are techniques that we can incorporate to make people feel safer when they're using those sidewalks, and how you feel in an area helps dictate whether you're gonna use or walk in an area. If you don't feel safe, just the speed of traffic going past you, if you don't feel safe with that, how can we help slow that down a little bit so that you're more likely to walk or bike? And so we received a report, it's called the Walkable Livable Institute report, and it's on the Heart of New Ulm website, which is now migrated to the Chamber of Commerce website. And there was a laundry list of recommendations. And we have accomplished a lot of those recommendations. And the recommendations that are left are big ticket items. They are big dollar items. And we continue to talk about it. And I think if we continue to talk and get more people interested and understand what some of the options are, because it's going to cost money, and we have to have the support of the community in order to do it. That's what
Through
we need.
taxes, are you talking about, or?
I think it's a variety of different
Yeah,
funding options.
I think the biggest ticket item that was in that report that is still that's still out there is the intersection of Center and Garden Street. Anybody who drives through the city knows that that's can be a very, very difficult intersection, especially at our peak times at school drop-off and pickup times. But like Cindy said, we have done a lot. You know, the mid-block crossing on Garden Street between Vogel Arena and the school complexes, I think is a good feather in our cap that gets used every single day during the school year by students leaving the middle school and going to Vogel after school. So, you know, those little improvements, they do make a difference. And where we can find an appropriate spot for them, we definitely try to incorporate that into our design and planning process. But something big ticket like Center and Garden, that being that it's also a county roadway, that's multimodal collaboration between not only the city and the county to try to find a solution for that, you know, when funds would become available. And the, you know, funds for that, it could be county aid. It's a county state aid highway, so there's state money that the county gets for it. It's also municipal state aid roadway too, so we can use state aid funds for that. But it's finding that appropriate solution that appeases everybody, all, you know, both jurisdictions on that. So,
Is there a proposal for that? What are they thinking about? What are they thinking about doing?
well, a couple of years ago, the city engineer's office actually submitted improvements at that intersection. Would have been a pedestrian tunnel with a roundabout. Ultimately, obviously, we didn't get chosen for that project, but that's probably the one solution that we feel pretty heavily on, is being a roundabout at the location. Whether or not there's a pedestrian tunnel or not, that, you know, that would be decided further on in the design process. But at least from our standpoint, that seems like a viable option. But I guess we really haven't had that discussion with the county, as being that we didn't get selected for that project to move forward. We just kind of dropped it at that point. But we have a great working relationship with the county engineering department as well, and the highway department. And as we get closer for that roadway to be reconstructed, maybe that's the time we can look at that, or something that big ticket would be most likely a standalone project in itself. So.
Okay.
And I was going to say something about that too, what you just said about when the roadway is going to be reconstructed. A lot of times these improvements are done when the road is ready to be redone or it needs work. So that's what just happened down at on German by Johnson Field, is that roadway came up to be redone. And so part of the Complete Streets is that they looked at all of the crossings and worked in pedestrian crossings into the roadway improvement. So I'm not sure when 5th North is scheduled to be redone next, but that's why the Safe Routes to School has been trying out different things at those intersections. We do temporary bump outs. We've done different things because when it comes time to redo the street, we already have some ideas of what will work and how we want to fit that into the new design.
Mm-hmm.
And something along those natures, we actually, you know, we talked to other users as well, so that we talked to New Ulm bus lines to see what their feelings are. Is it maneuverable? You know, is this something that's going to work for them, being that they're a heavy user of that segment, you know, with the bus traffic and stuff too. So we try to bring as many end users to the table as we can, so we can get a good feel of how this will be received and what the proper improvement would be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit about education. I think that education piece is extremely important, and I know, Amanda, that you have done some very great things with walking school bus and trying to educate kids and educate parents on safety when crossing the street.
Well, yeah, I think Cindy does a lot of that as well. I volunteer. I walk with the kids to the school. So the walking school buses are another way to decrease the amount of traffic around schools. So if you don't have as many parents dropping students off, there are less cars. It works out that way. So a lot of communities have drop-off points that are a few blocks away, or 6 blocks away from the school, where the parents can drop them off and then the kids can walk safely to school. So we've done that twice a year for the past, I can't even, how many years have I been out there? 4 years. Where we'll have different drop-off locations around town, the medical center, Turner Hall, I can't remember the other, Lincoln Park. So then a group of students congregates and walks to school that way. And like I said, it does a couple of things. It decreases the amount of traffic around the schools. It gets the kids some of that energy out in the morning. It gets their mind going, ready for school. And it also shows just the drivers, the everyday drivers, if they get used to big groups or a lot of kids walking to school, then they're going to be on the lookout for them more often.
Thank you.